Hey all, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this video we're going to be doing my first Dark Souls early game guide and build, and this is how to get a really powerful, basically bonk strength weapon early, upgrade it, and kind of crush the game, run into the game, and turn it into easy mode. First things first, for your class, you're going to pick the warrior class because we're a strength build. That's going to give us 16 strength to start, which is really good, and then pick the life ring as well because that's going to give you some extra health to start. So I'm going to say this right away. We're going to run and actually try to get this weapon as fast as possible so you can use this for the majority of the game. As far as regular items and stuff, you're going to explore on your own. I recommend exploring on your own. This is for getting the weapon fast, getting it upgraded a bit, and being powerful early. So follow me directly as we're going to basically run and get one of the most powerful early game weapons in Vordt's hammer, and you're going to be able to crush the game with this weapon. We're going to get it upgraded a bit too, and it's going to do a ton of damage. So, we're really only going to have to face 3 bosses. We're going to have to fight the tutorial boss, and then we're going to have to fight 2 bosses. We're going to have to beat Vordt, and then we have to beat one other boss so we can trade in boss souls. But other than that, that's it. We're going to get a really powerful strength weapon, and the weapon that does the most frost damage in the entire game. Yeah, Vordt's hammer has the highest frost amount in the entire game. Most bosses, it's going to be 2 hits to proc frost, and at the most 3. Yeah, there's going to be some bosses that are immune to certain status effects, but having this weapon, the amount of physical damage it does too, it's incredible. Now, you would want that item if you want to upgrade the axe that you have currently, because it will help with that. That's not going to help us upgrade Vordt's hammer, though, so we're going to continue to press on, fight the tutorial boss, and you could follow my exact strategy. The tutorial boss, by the way, is not that difficult at all. You're not going to really struggle much with this. If you're just starting Dark Souls 3 for the first time, it could be a little bit difficult, but overall, this is one of the, I would consider, easier first bosses in the Dark Souls games, Bloodborne, etc. Relatively speaking, he goes down pretty quick. Now, when you walk up to him and you end up pulling out the sword that you're going to end up getting, you're going to hit him as many times as possible. Just try to get in there and hit him a bunch of times, and then he has really slow attacks. I recommend dodging through them. You could parry them too, though, if you're decent at parrying. And then when you get this boss down to phase 2, he's essentially going to mutate into an entire another boss, but it's more intimidating than it actually is. If you get underneath him, not a lot of his attacks can hit you. I get hit a couple times, but overall it's kind of a safe point. Just get as much damage as you can. Definitely intimidating to look at, though. When you look at this boss phase 2, which, like, first time, I'm sure you walk in here, and it does look scary in a sense, because it looks like the boss can just pretty much eat you, but that's not going to happen if you stay under him. There's only a couple attacks that are going to hit you, and he's only going to have half his HP. Alright, now that the tutorial boss is down, we're going to end up heading through those doors. After we light this bonfire, we're going to head through those doors, and then we're going to head up to the shrine bonfire. You're going to go up the stairs on the right and head towards that area. This next quick part is really simple, so once you're at the shrine bonfire, we're going to catch up here. And now we're on to part 2, which you're going to put the coiled sword down, you're going to light the shrine bonfire. This is basically going to be your base camp. If you're familiar with Elden Ring, this is essentially the round table hold where you're going to do everything, and we can level up a little bit here too. Follow my exact levels in this guide because we're going to focus on a couple things. We want a little bit of vigor, we want a little bit of endurance, vitality, and then strength, of course, later on, since we're going for a bonk weapon, is going to be our main stat. So your main stat is strength, and keep in mind the soft caps are different in the Souls games compared to Elden Ring. I know some people that may be playing this while they're waiting for Elden Ring DLC, and in that case it's 60 and 80 for a lot of stuff. In this case, generally speaking, you just need to get to 40, 60 at most. And now part 3 is going to be High Wall of Lothric, and in this case you're going to follow me once again. We're going to continue on, and we're just going to press on. We're going to press on as much as we can. We're skipping a lot of the items and stuff. I recommend exploring along the way, and then you're ready. Follow exactly what I do so we can get to the boss. The whole concept here is to basically run and gun right for that weapon, right? Get it upgraded, once or so, and then get a really good weapon, get it powerful enough, and then start to hit enemies, bosses, etc. for big damage. This is absolutely no doubt one of my favorite weapons in the game too, because I can assure you as the game goes on and you use Vordt's hammer late game too, you don't even need like a ton of buffs or anything, or even rings really. I mean, there are some better rings later in the game, not too many early game, and you're going to get a weapon that's consistently good all the time throughout the entire game. This and the Ethereal Straight Sword are 2 of my favorite weapons in Dark Souls, not only because they proc frost, but because they do a good amount of damage too. Both weapons can be grabbed relatively early. I like the bigger bonk hits though for more damage with Vordt's hammer. By the way, enemies will follow you a lot in the Souls series, so they do catch up with me from time to time because I'm running through stuff, but I end up taking them down pretty easily with the axe, and the next step here is going to be getting to the shortcut. I'm going to show you how to grab the shortcut in case you have to fight Vordt more than once. Now, Vordt is pretty easy. Even at base level without upgraded weapons, he's not a very difficult boss in my opinion because all of his attacks are relatively slow. And now we're going to go across the rooftops, and essentially we're working our way down now. We want to get down below at the bottom area of this level because that's where the boss is, that's where the banner that you need to get out of this area is, and also that's where the shortcut is, which can make your life a little bit easier. And grab any items on the way. Again, I'm skipping most things. I'm going to continue to press forward because for me, I like, especially when a weapon's available early, I'm the type of person that likes to play with that weapon for most of my playthrough. So that's what we're doing here. We're gunning for Vordt's hammer. Also, if you're not subbed to my Variety Gaming channel, make sure you sub to that channel. And if you like Elden Ring content, check out Your Average Gamer, my main channel. I think a lot of people probably know about that channel by now. This is my other channel where I'm going to be doing different content. If you want to see stuff for like Bloodborne and such too, comment that below. Yeah, this channel for me is just a way to kind of play different games and have fun with them and explore different things and kind of share stuff I learned along the way in different games, including Dark Souls 3 here, which I have a couple hundred hours in. I still can't believe that I started at Dark Souls 2 and then played enough at 2 where I kind of liked it, but it was not really typically like the other Souls games, which I didn't know at the time because I started at 2, and then I played 3, and man, 3 got me hooked. After that, Elden Ring was incredible, and the Souls series has been phenomenal. Alright, now we've unlocked a shortcut. That's huge. It's a huge help, by the way. I'm not going to show the area above me, but it's basically the first bonfire that you're at when you get out of this this door here, and this is going to bring you back. If you end up dying to Vordt, you can get back down to him quickly. And now we're going to be taking this shortcut back down. You could rest at the bonfire if need be. It's right above you, and we're going to be heading to take on Vordt, the first main boss of Dark Souls 3. And I'm looking forward to this. The best part of the Souls games is generally taking on bosses, so this should be a pretty good boss fight for you. It definitely gets you ready for the rest of the game too, because it's not overly difficult, but you do have to dodge his attacks at least decently because he can hit you pretty hard. He's slow, but he's hard hitting. Crazy enough, like the first boss, and there's a theme with some bosses in Dark Souls 3 for this, is if you stay directly under him, you're safer in a lot of cases. Not in Phase 2, though. In Phase 2, he can completely trample you and run you over. Now, this boss has 2 hard attacks to dodge for most players, and they're both going to appear in Phase 2 at least mostly. I think he does the first one in Phase 1, but not as much. He has an attack that's below him that could sweep under him and hit you, and then he has a running attack, which you have to dodge usually 3 times. Yeah, so the whole thing with Phase 1, as I mentioned, is getting close to him, getting underneath him, and watching out for the slams. A lot of the attacks are kind of predictable. Now, that drag, he kind of has an altered version of it in Phase 2, or at least one in Phase 2 that's going to hit you more so, more like the second one you saw there, and a running attack too. Out of the 2 main bosses, by the way, that we have to take on, the second main boss is the one that's kind of a gimmick boss fight that you need in order to trade in boss souls. Vordt I like much better because it's not a gimmick boss fight. I'm not a huge fan of the gimmick boss fight stuff. We'll talk about that fight when we get to it. For this one, though, it is definitely going to get you better at the game. Yeah, you're going to have to learn how to dodge. You're going to have to learn how to be quick in this case because when you get to Phase 2, you see that running attack. You're going to have to dodge that properly because you don't want to get trampled by him. If you get hit once by that and he ends up stopping with any follow-up attacks or frost, you could be in big trouble. Also, when he does the freeze attack, use charged hits behind him. You can get in 2 or 3, and it does a ton of damage to Vordt. Yeah, he does beat me up at the end a little bit because he is more difficult in Phase 2. Now, Phase 1 I find very easy. Phase 2 is a little bit more difficult. For me, he only took 1 try, ultimately. The second boss I had to take on ended up taking me 2. Down goes Vordt, not too bad there. And now, directly behind you, literally directly south, if you continue, you could grab a banner from the lady that's at the entrance to Lothric Castle. Do not hit her, by the way. It'll start a late-game boss fight unless you're really feeling like you want to test the game. Grab that banner and then head out to the next area. Alright, now we're in Undead Settlement. Now, I need you to pay attention to what I have to say here because it's important. There's an NPC right below you to the left that you have to find. I recommend talking to him before you move forward with anything else. Because this is a guide, I'm going to continue on, but I definitely recommend talking to that NPC. You have the option for getting 5 more levels at the cost of, like, hollowing, and on top of that, later there's another quest line. I won't spoil anything for you because this is an early game guide, but it actually leads to something in a bigger quest line later on where if you miss them, you could end up messing up that quest line. Alright, let's continue pressing on in Undead Settlement, the second area of the game. We're going to have to take on the boss in this area, which, by the way, isn't mandatory, but kind of is. Technically speaking, I don't believe it's mandatory, but if you want to trade in boss souls for weapons, which I think most people are going to want to do, and we're going to want to do, we need to fight the tree. Yeah, pretty much a very important fight with the tree, which, by the way, again, I mentioned it's a gimmick fight. Not a huge fan of those. Now we're going to level up some more, follow exactly my levels on screen because we're going to need a certain amount of strength. Strength's going to be our main stat. We want to make sure we have a good amount of vigor, too, endurance, and vitality. We're going to head back to Undead Settlement, where we're going to move forward and continue on and head to fight the tree that could let us trade in boss souls and eventually get Vordt's hammer, one of the best early game weapons and one of the best bonk weapons in the game. And once again, keep following me. I love Dark Souls 3, by the way. Just watching this guide again, playing it again for the first time in a while, it was so much fun. And if you want to see, by the way, at the end of this one, me to continue to build on Vordt's hammer, I could do that too for a couple, kind of like a series or something. That would be something I'd be down for, because later on in the game, you could build around it. Later on in the game, there's good rings, there's a way to get a lot of damage out of it, some buffs and stuff that you could use too. Early game, though, not so much. It's mainly getting the hammer, getting it upgrading, and doing good damage. Yeah, not a lot of rings or early game buffs and things that you could do that I really like for Vordt's hammer. Overall, it's just a really powerful weapon early game, and you're going to be overpowered with this anyway because it does so much damage per hit, and 2 hits is going to get you a frost proc. By the way, I'm running past all the enemies. If you have difficulty running past them, you can take on these regular enemies. They're not too difficult with the regular axe, but you can run past them too. If you follow directly what I do, you could pretty much avoid most of them. Yeah, it's not going to be overly difficult to take on some of these enemies, but for me, the red eyes, though, by the way, the red eyed enemies, those are ones that you probably want to run past. They're the hardest. Everything else is relatively easy. The red eyed ones, though, will do more damage to you, and typically they take more damage as well. There's actually a red-eyed knight in the first area that you could get, I believe, like embers and such, and good drops from him overall, but he's really hard to take on at early levels because he has so much defense, takes a good amount of damage, and then hits really hard too. Alright, let's grab this bonfire up here so we can move forward, continue moving downward. Once again, the level kind of goes downward because we want to get to that tree so that we can trade in boss souls. Let's continue on. Alright, part 8, getting towards the tree. Now, this part could be a little bit difficult because there is a giant troll-like enemy that's going to shoot arrows up here, so you need to be really careful, and there's a whole bunch of enemies up ahead, too. You can run past them, but keep in mind this part is a little bit difficult. So I'm giving you a bit of a warning, a heads up here, that you may end up dying here. I did die here once trying to run past me. Now, you could try to fight the enemies here, but keep in mind, the other enemy is going to shoot arrows at you, which are going to do massive damage, and it makes it difficult. You end up getting hit here a lot. By the way, to the right, once you clear out this area, you could actually talk to the giant. He could become your friend, and then will shoot the enemies for you. Once you talk to him, go back to that area. There's a flask upgrade you need to grab. I didn't do the whole item guide part because I like gunning for the weapon, having it, and then you could always go back and explore around, and when you explore around, you're going to have a weapon that, especially for regular enemies, is absolutely going to crush them. It's going to be awesome. Alright, let's continue pressing forward. You're going to want to open this, by the way. We're going to grab the bonfire that's nearby in case you get killed by the tree. For me, the tree ended up taking 2 tries. It's a little bit of a difficult fight with a base level weapon in this case, but it's not too bad. It's just kind of gimmicky. And you're going to go up these stairs here, continue moving on. There's going to be a cliff underside bonfire. We're going to grab that. And that's a nice bonfire to have anyway, because not only is that going to help us with the tree, when you go into the next area as well, it's not far by. Yeah, this axe really isn't bad to start with. There's definitely worser weapons to start with than this battle axe here. It's not too bad. Keep following me. We're going to drop down. We're going to grab that bonfire. Once we do, everything should get a little bit easier. Alright, you can follow me. I think there's another way down here. I ended up going this way and then just dropping down, taking on the enemies here, and then grabbing the bonfire below. And again, that bonfire is really good to have overall because it's going to help you if you end up getting defeated by the tree. And for me, I did get beat by the tree once. I had to beat him on the second try. Overall, he's a little bit difficult. Now, if you grab some flask upgrades and stuff, you want to look up locations for them, it could help you overall. There's probably 1 or 2. There's at least 1 or 2 that I missed. But for me, with 4 health flasks, that should be enough. Back at the shrine bonfire, by the way, the smither there is how you switch your flasks over. That's how I ended up with 4. I didn't upgrade anything. 4 flasks is fine enough. This fight's kind of long. It's not necessarily difficult. It just goes on for a little bit. Yeah, I don't really care as much for the fights where you have to go up and fight and basically hit a specific thing on the boss. In this case, it's going to be the sacks that are on the tree. We're going to talk about that in a second. You have to hit each one to kind of do the maximum amount of damage. Everything else you hit pretty much either does none or very little damage. Alright, we're going to press on here. We're going to end up taking on the tree. I'm not going to voice over the whole tree fight because it does go on for like 4 minutes and change. I'm going to talk about my strategy though real quick. So after defeating a regular enemy, usually I go for the enemy that's on the right. He will wake up, and after he wakes up, you have to continue to attack these sacks that are on him. You're going to have to get 2 of them in order to go into phase 2 of the fight, and then in phase 2 you can follow my strategy. If you don't need help with this fight, jump into the next step, which is timestamped. Yeah, of course that fight went on for a really long time. That's why I didn't voice over the whole thing. Just follow my strategy. Overall, it's a long fight, though. It's not too difficult. Now we're going to go back, get some levels, and of course, we're going to grab our weapon. Continue to focus on vigor, endurance, vitality, and strength. You're going to need a decent amount of vitality if you want to have some armor later because the weapon is heavy. You're going to need a decent amount of endurance because it chews through stamina too. And of course, vigor is really important in all Souls games to have a decent amount so you can take damage. And now we're going to end up trading in, which you go up these stairs and then you're going to have to drop down. We're going to trade in the transposing kiln. I think it's called something like that. Anyways, we're going to trade that in here. Transposing kiln, and we're going to be able to grab Vordt's hammer for no cost. Keep in mind when trading in boss souls, now some of it's going to be weapons, some of it's going to be rings, spells, etc. Keep in mind though, sometimes they're going to cost something, they're going to cost a decent amount of souls, and other times they're going to be free. In this case it's free, we got Vordt's hammer, and we're going to equip it. You do not need the 30 strength requirement, by the way. We're going to end up getting rid of some of the armor. Later, you're going to grab more vitality points so you can upgrade your equipment load. But as far as two-handing it, you only need 20 strength to two-hand it. And now we got one of my favorite weapons in Dark Souls 3 in Vordt's hammer. We can hit stuff really hard. The charge attacks do massive damage, but we're going to need to upgrade it. So we're going to go back to the Cemetery of Ash. Follow me directly on screen because we're going to grab the first upgrade material. Alright, we're going to press on. We're going to end up fighting a crystal lizard, and now with an on-upgraded Vordt's hammer, by the way, this fight was still relatively easy. And sometimes the crystal lizards, by the way, could be relatively difficult to fight, and this fight ended up being easy because we just do so much damage with this Bonk Weapon. Keep following my lead. We're going to continue going forward. Take out the regular enemies because they may follow you. And at this point, yeah, they're not the toughest enemies. We have enough vigor at this point where we can take them on. But you don't want them stabbing you in the back when you take on this crystal lizard. So take them out and continue forward. By the way, when we go up here, you're not going to see the crystal lizard on my screen. It'll be there for you. It's because I recorded the clip to find it after I had fought him already. And now I'm going to show that fight. It's not too difficult. Regular attacks, charge attacks, by the way, will stun him. Either way, you're going to be able to do massive damage even at base level here. 3 hits, I think, is about half his HP, and we're able to proc Frost too. Now, he's going to end up dropping a Titanite scale. That's what you're going to be using to upgrade Vordt's hammer. In this case, we're going to get it to +1, and it does make a big difference getting it to +1 early on. It's going to hit for more damage, of course. Overall, ends up being a solid weapon. And this weapon, no doubt in my mind, can carry you through the entire game. I've done a playthrough of Vordt's hammer before. It doesn't really fall off at any point. Even on New Game Plus and beyond, it's not going to fall off either. It just does a lot of damage pretty much all the time. Absolutely one of my favorites too, and one of my favorites to grab early game too, because there's not many other weapons that are going to have this level of AR this early in Dark Souls 3, so that's a huge bonus here. And now we're on to the final things. We're going to upgrade at the smither. We're going to get this weapon to +1, which is going to be plenty good for the time being. You can get it to +2, by the way, when you get to Farron Keep. I believe there's 2 more Titanite scales there. If I recall, there's another crystal lizard there, and that one's going to drop 2, I believe. I believe he drops 2 Titanite scales, and that'll get it to +2 for you. You continue to need more as you level up, and it maxes out at +5. And this is what I did with my final levels: 18 Vigor, 14 Vitality, 15 Endurance, 22 Strength. You're going to continue to focus, as mentioned, on Vigor, Vitality, Strength, and Endurance. This is the next boss, by the way. We're able to, in 2 hits, get massive damage on him. We took down half his HP. If you want to check out this fight, this is going to be the end of the video. If this helps you, this is going to be the next boss you run into if you want a strategy for him, but overall, a solid, powerful weapon. Thanks for watching and tuning into this video. I hope this helps you get overpowered early in Dark Souls 3, and I hope this starts your journey very strong, which it should, by the way. Strength builds are really fun. Also, be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to sub as well if you like this content. If you want to see more Dark Souls content, be sure to comment too. Thanks for watching this early game guide. It's going to end with the end of this boss fight. I appreciate everybody for tuning in, and I will catch you guys soon.